Okay, this is going to be a heavy one. So this video is pretty much, this is legit a life topic. So AWM covers a variety of things, but one thing we're going to talk about is life and pro-life. And the reason why I'm going to talk about this today is because every time we get closer to, we have a Supreme Court justice potential that wishes to remain mute, but has been known to have some very, very conservative views on things such as birth control and pro-choice versus pro-life. And so it's a very scary time. Tara, this is going to be a heavy topic. This is a life topic. AWM covers life topics too. And so for my first life topic, I want to talk about pro-choice, pro-life, and speak from a personal experience as to why I'm currently pro-choice. I remember when I was a kid going through high school, we used to have debates at the lunch tables talking about, pro-choice versus pro-life, and people would be really judgmental, and I was too, about, abortions. I was like, it's wrong, it's morally, blah, 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 you're gonna go to hell, it's bad, it's evil, until I got pregnant at the age of 16. And so it's a really, really complicated story, and I'll try to leave out as much not triggering information about it, but I'm going to share my experience with you and give you some perspectives that some people may not have thought about when it comes down to the argument of pro-choice, pro-life. Alternatively, this video is definitely for the young black girl or girl out there that is currently enduring any type of sexual trauma that may be in the same situation that I was when I was 16. And I just wanted to give them some hope and let them know that, you're not alone, it's not your fault, and you have to do what's best for you. So when I was 10 years old, my mother and my father separated, and my dad went back to New York. My mother stayed in Wisconsin with my baby brother, and my mother sent us to our guardian, who was our uncle. Come to find out, he was not uncle by blood at all. I didn't know this until much later. But we were sent there to New Jersey to live there temporarily, which ultimately turned into a permanent guardianship. Later on in that situation, after I was able to finally leave, I found out that I was actually bargained for. Me and my sister were actually sold to this man. So from the age of 10 to 20, I dealt with a decade of emotional, physical, and sexual abuse. And I remember when I was 16, I remember I started to get cramps. And I was like, oh, hey, my period's about to come. And I went to the nurse's office. Do they have nurse's office in high school anymore? Anyways, I went to the nurse's office while I was in high school to go pick up like a pad or whatever. And I used it, and I noticed that even though I was cramping, that my period didn't come. And by then, I think we had already gone through the life class or whatever, where they talk about some reproductive health and everything like that. And understanding pregnancy and sex and everything was part of my grooming into normalizing what my abuser was doing. So I automatically knew that there was something wrong, that there was a possibility that I could be pregnant. I didn't say anything for a while. I mentioned it maybe about 2 weeks or so to my abuser that my period didn't come. And I remember during that time, I was afraid for my sister to know, because I didn't want her to know, so I would make pretend that I had my period, and I would take pads and intentionally wrap them up and put them in a trash can, just so my sister would think that my period was functioning as normal, but it wasn't. And it took about a full month for me to not get my period, for my abuser to actually go to the grocery store and pick up a test. And I was so pregnant that the test, by the time I finished peeing on it, it was already positive. But I still put it down on the counter in the bathroom, and I came out of the bathroom and waited a few minutes, acting like I didn't know that it was positive. And then when I went back into the bathroom, and yeah, it was positive, I told him, and he had gaslighted us so much And this man was evil, a pure form of evil. He was a very well-known, highly respected professional. He had a PhD in psychology and taught at Fayetteville State University. He had a PhD in psychology, which means he knew everything to say and do to manipulate anybody into getting what they want, to include sexually abusing young children. And so when I told him that it was positive, he accused me of doing something to him. Now, I'm a 16-year-old girl, and he was much bigger than me, of course, and I may have sexually assaulted a grown adult. I digress. As soon as he realized, it sank into him that I was legit pregnant, and he looked at the test a few times, immediately he wanted to know if I wanted to keep it, as if that was like within the realm of possibilities, which it was because of everything that I was going through, but he wanted me to keep it. And he talked about how, he still wanted a daughter. Now, mind you, he already had 4 sons. His firstborn was actually a daughter, and she passed due to SIDS. And so he was guilt tripping me and telling me that, he still had a chance of having a daughter. Do we want to keep this? And, I asked him, like, well, how am I going to go to school? Like, where am I going to go? Like, immediately trying to like talk about, how he's going to hide me from the world. Now, when I was growing up in that house, I was constantly being punished. So I was malnourished. I was a scrawny, skinny kid. And it didn't really take very long for me to show. And then, at about 5 to 6 weeks, I started getting morning sickness. I remember one morning I had dress rehearsal because I was in the orchestra, and I got sick. I got morning sickness, and once I got finished throwing up, he had to drop me off at school with my violin in tow straight to the rehearsal, and I had to pretend like life was normal. It was a really difficult period for me because here I am, I'm pregnant, and it got to the point where he was just constantly putting it off, where I remember going down the stairs to go to school, and he stopped me and he was like, you need to get a longer shirt. And he's like, you're starting to show. And I'm like, I was really embarrassed. So I'm dealing with this thing, being pregnant. I'm trying to be a normal kid, which I wasn't a normal kid in high school. And then I'm having to hide this secret between, his wife and my sister. And I remember this is how bad my household was. I remember when I was 13 or 14, his wife, she pulled me into the room, and the only womanly advice that this woman had ever given me was that if I got pregnant, she wasn't going to help me raise the baby. As if somehow, at the time being 13, 14, I was making a conscious decision to have consensual sex with my guardian, who is 50-something years old. That's another story. So during this time, he's still talking to me about, whether or not I want to have this baby. And I kept saying, no, even though he was going to send me to North Carolina to have the baby, and that someone else would take care of it, and trying to bargain. And I was just like, no. And at that point, with everything that I had endured, it was like I had enough sense to know at the age of 16 that if I had this baby, a couple of things were going to happen. The thing, he was going to abuse this child. Now, I was afraid that if I had a daughter, he would do the same things that he was doing to me. I was also scared to have a son because I had lived with his 2 sons, who at the time were now adults and had moved on. And he would go into their rooms with a briefcase several times a week, and I would hear screaming, and he's just beating them. And I never, to this day, I never knew what was inside that suitcase. But as I got older and got a little bit braver to snoop around, I remember finding Polaroids of one of his sons naked. So there were horrible things going. It wasn't just a sex thing. Didn't matter if it was male or female. I knew that whatever I was enduring and whatever his sons endured, that if I had another child, that he was going to do the same exact things to him or her. Another thing that really scared me was that I had enough sense to know that if I had this baby, I was going to be tied to this man forever. And I was at that age where I was starting to understand how not normal my situation was, and was constantly trying to seek ways to get out of the situation, to include killing myself. I remember, I would be at home alone, and I would sneak downstairs and grab a knife from the kitchen and just go back upstairs and sit in the tub, and I would just try to slit my wrists. And I would get so scared, because death is still a scary thing. I was groomed up, brought to believe in heaven and hell. And at the same time, I didn't want to leave my sister. I didn't want to leave her alone. I didn't want to leave her to herself in that situation. I didn't want to go through it. But what was definitely for sure, that if I did not do something about what was growing inside, and then I thought about, what if this child comes out looking like my abuser? Would I be able to love this child? Would I be able to nurture it? And I was just scared of, will I abuse this child too? Because everything that I had gone through, I would take out on this child that potentially looked just like my abuser. And another thing that I knew about the situation was that if he tried to make me have this baby, I knew 100% without a doubt that I was going to kill myself. I knew that somehow I had to get out of that situation. If he was not going to let me have this abortion, I was definitely going to end my life and that of the fetus. And so at the 10-week mark, he finally decided to let me have the procedure. And I remember he didn't want me to make the phone call to the abortion clinic. He didn't even want me to call an abortion clinic in the state. Living in New Jersey, he was like, find one, and he made me look it up. I'm trying to remember. Either he made me find one, or he told me to find one out of state. I found one in Pennsylvania, maybe it was Philly. And he made me walk from that house all the way to a payphone. I think it was like a mile and a half away, to this payphone to call the abortion clinic and schedule an appointment. So here I am, 16 years old. I remember to this day exactly where I was. It was a mint green dress that had a bow in the front, and my hair was tied back, and I had some simple earrings in my ear. I didn't dress like the typical 16-year-old. It was almost like I had to constantly cover my body that was constantly objectified and shaved at the same time. I had to always cover my body. So here I am, typical 16-year-old, being able to wear some bell-bottom jeans or some boot-cut jeans, but no, I can't show my body. So here I am in this dress that makes me still look like I'm 8 or 10. And we're driving to this clinic, and on the way there, he's still trying to convince me not to go through with this procedure. And I had to keep telling him that I wanted to have the abortion. I didn't tell him why. I was afraid to tell him why. I was afraid that he would get angry. This was a man that would like slam my head into fucking carpet just for leaving behind a small piece of ice when I defrosted the fridge. So I was afraid to say things that would make him angry, and so I just told him that I was sure, I was totally positive, and it was the longest ride of my life. And so I remember getting to the clinic, and I remember getting out of the car, and I don't know if to this day they still have people protesting outside of abortion clinics, but I remember getting to the abortion clinic. And as I go in, I remember reading all these signs. Some of the signs called me a whore. Some of the signs told me that I was going to hell. Some of the signs told me that I was a murderer, and that I was less than a human being. And I remember thinking to myself as I read these signs walking into the clinic, I was like, I'm just a kid. And I'm saying to myself, like, I'm just a kid. Like, you don't know what I'm going through. Nobody wants to go through what I'm going through. I never wanted to be in this position to even be here. And here I am, I'm being judged by these people that are protesting. And then I'm this kid, this scrawny kid trying to hide my baby bump and hide the fact that the man that has brought me into this abortion clinic is a man that has been raping me for the past 6 years. And so I remember sitting down and going through the paperwork, and I'm asking him, which questions I should answer, because I was so scared to let on that this is the guy that got me pregnant. And I wondered to this day if it was obvious. Like, how is it that you have this little girl, this scrawny little 16-year-old, that looking at her, you would know that this kid is not, the typical 16-year-old, innocent, not really. I was pretty much sheltered from outside life. You can tell when you look at children, like, what's going on as far as their upbringing. How is it that this little girl, 16 years old, is with this much older man? I wonder to this day if it just looks sus to anybody. And so I remember going through, we filled out the paperwork, and first thing that they do is they have to, in order to determine how much the abortion procedure is going to cost, and I don't remember how much it costs to this day. I remember in my mind it being a lot. They had to do an ultrasound. And so the ultrasound measured that the baby was 13 weeks old. Now, if you had the procedure done by 12 weeks, it was going to be like $100 cheaper or something like that. But the doctor looked at the both of us, and maybe he knew something was wrong. He couldn't put his finger on it. Maybe it was like a situation that he had seen on multiple occasions. But he went ahead and charged my guardian for the cost of a 12-week abortion. And so I had to sit in this waiting room with a bunch of women that were just casually talking about, their procedures. And I remember one girl talking to another girl across the room, and she's like, oh yeah, girl, this is my 5th time, blah, blah, blah. And I remember like being like kind of disgusted. I was like, how is that abortion is being treated like birth control? I don't understand that. Imagine how, I remember sitting down thinking, like, how much does this abortion cost versus you've had it 5 times. So you mean to tell me that you've coughed up thousands of dollars, where I can only imagine that birth control or abstinence was cheaper. I digress. But I sat in this room full of women, and I had to wait until it was my turn. And I remember just being so scared. And I was walked back there by myself. And I remember it was the first time I was separated from this man. I was like, do I tell them what I'm going through? This is my chance. I remember saying this to myself. This is my chance to get away. This is my chance to tell them what's going on. This is my chance. But what kept me from not saying anything is I was afraid of being separated from my sister. And everything that my abuser had programmed into me, the fear of the unknown, the fear of living life outside the walls of my abuse, I kept quiet. And I had the procedure done. They put me to sleep, and I woke up, and I had some post-operative vomiting, and I stayed there for a while, and then they sent me back to my guardian, and we drove to a motel, and I recovered there for that day, and he made me go for a walk. And he was upset. He gave me the discharge paperwork with the ultrasound of that baby like stapled to the paper, and he made me look at it like as if it was something to be ashamed of. And I went for a walk, and I'm looking at this ultrasound, this little peanut. And I remember thinking to myself that I'm sorry that I had to do it. But at the same time, I wasn't sorry, because I knew what kind of world my child would have been brought into. I knew that looking at that fetus, or that, that I knew that either it was going to go or the both of us were going to go. I knew that if I had that baby, that if it was a girl, it would endure horrible things that I still have nightmares to this day, and I'm almost 40. If it was a boy, it would have endured the things that have led to several issues that his sons have had. His 4 sons, years of abuse, growing up in an abusive home. I couldn't, and I felt like that baby was much better off not being born because of it. Now, this isn't like a plea for pro-choice versus pro-life. This isn't even an argument for that, because I feel like people should be able to choose. I don't believe that, abortion should be used like birth control, but what I illustrating to people that don't understand is that there are some very unfortunate circumstances going on that you would have no idea. Chances are that you have a neighbor, a friend that has gone through something that I have gone through or similar that can't even speak on it. And I want to tell, young girls out there that are possibly watching this video looking for some type of answer because they're in the same boat that I was in, that it's not your fault. It's not your fault. I'm not doing this video to convince you to do, to abort or keep it. That's not the purpose of this video. The purpose of this video is to tell you that you're not alone, and to not let anybody judge you for your choices or whatever choice that you feel that is best for you. I'm in the United States. We've got a potential Supreme Court justice whom we don't really understand her stance, although she has a pattern for some very, very conservative views. People that have the impact to completely alter their lives, alter women's lives, without the choice to choose what's best for them. It's a scary time. And I'm hoping that maybe somebody will watch this video and realize that there's more to abortion rights than just, choosing to haphazardly, end a pregnancy that, that wasn't a mistake. There's some circumstances that are completely beyond anybody's control. And a young girl should not have to choose to have her abuser's baby because of laws that are completely tone deaf to situations like these. If you're out there and you're in a situation that is similar to mine, please understand that you're not alone. Also understand that this is something that you can definitely, rise from, and get help. If you know somebody that is potentially going through this situation, it's a very sensitive issue, send them to this video. I'm going to drop some national helpline numbers and websites down in the description box below. Please take care and look up after each other, and most importantly, protect Black girls.